Alright, music fans, welcome back. It is Dave, the Real Music Observer, observing real music in real time for real people, just like you, right there, and just like me right here. Really, the video I did earlier today about Steve Perry in rehearsal probably was enough for the day, because that thing is blowing up, as is the speculation. I've had people already tell me that, oh, when Journey gets to the LA Forum, Steve's going to come out on stage and, grab the microphone from Arnell and, sing a couple of encore tunes at the end, and probably Lights would be one of them because, Neil's been dedicating Lights to Steve and yada, yada, yada. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I told you about a week or two ago, I was starting to receive some vibrations from the Steve Perry world. I had one contact who is in that region of the country and sort of travels within those same circles. Think of him as like a guy who's in the farm system, all right, and is trying to break into the major leagues. And every once in a while, he'll report back to me about something that's happening in the majors, hoping to get to the majors somehow. And he's played with a few major leaguers, so my analogy is a little bit skewed there, but, he told me that I don't want to give this away, but there's talk again about a Steve Perry album that might get released. Now, here's some decent speculation about this. And if Steve is rehearsing, then he's exercising the vocal cords, which means if he's to release an album, and he probably isn't going to release it on a podunk record label, okay? He's probably negotiated for something, like Capitol Records, something big. I don't know if maybe CBS would have him back. I think they probably would, because then they'd have continuity of all the Steve Perry stuff on one record label. Would they do that? Yes. Maybe they said, well, look, you don't have to do a full-blown tour, or maybe you do a few select dates, or whatever. Maybe you do a couple of TV appearances. If Perry is exercising his vocal cords in a serious way and not just sort of palling around with some alternative rock musicians, which, by the way, seems to be a bit of a pattern, but I would attribute that to Steve Perry's ability to kind of be unpredictable, which he is very unpredictable. I go back to For the Love of Strange Medicine. I thought that was a real departure from what I was expecting to hear from Steve Perry, musically speaking. I think it was a very different sounding record, and from that point forward, even Trial by Fire had a very different sound for what Journey had done in the past, and I think Perry brought some of his influence from his second solo album into that project, which really changed the sound, because when you hear Arrival, the album Arrival with Steve Augeri, it goes back to kind of that 80s rock template, which most Journey fans feel very comfortable with. Anyway, that's a side video probably, and not just a tangent. The bottom line here is Perry is trying to sing. He's trying to probably test what he can do vocally. He's got this album under wraps and maybe ready to go at this point. And every record label worth their salt is going to say, hey, Steve, no problem. Can you do a few promotional appearances? Can you sing a couple of new tracks from the album for us, Get out there on a few talk shows, maybe even show up and do a little mini concert or something. Do a couple of select tunes from the old days and do a couple of tunes from the new record. And that's a process, by the way. If he's actually exercising and getting his vocal cords kind of ready for more activity, then this could be, a few months that have to go by, whereas Perry can see what he feels like the next day after he's sung some challenging material to see if his voice can withstand more. Maybe he needs to just take it slow. According to Neil Sean, and I think Neil's got a pretty good ear, Steve is probably going to be singing in a much lower key than he used to sing in, but we know that Steve Perry, for most folks at 50%, 60%, whatever, is going to be better than anyone else. I'm not saying that from my perspective, I'm saying it from Steve Perry fans. Most of them feel that if Perry goes out there and sings at 50%, they'll be totally psyched. My idea, and again, I shared this last summer, is what they ought to do is let Steve do an Eric Clapton style unplugged MTV concert thing. Of course, there's no MTV wouldn't have Steve Perry, but whatever, whoever wants to sponsor it. And Steve can sit, he doesn't have to stand. Rod Stewart, I think, did it seated. I think Eric Clapton was seated for most of his concert, as he's playing guitar and singing, and drop things to the correct place where Steve can handle it, and also maybe rework some of these songs where, like Clapton did Layla, and then when it was unplugged, it had a completely different personality. But guess what? It was really cool the way they reworked that song. I think Steve Perry fans, Journey fans would love to hear some unplugged, reworked versions of older songs coupled with the new material that is out there and ready to be heard. So that's my video. That's a little speculation here on this video. You probably knew I was going to have more to say about this. And I'll have even more to say as I learn more about what happened. And again, another Steve Perry sighting, so it's pretty consistent. He's keeping himself kind of in the news and to a point where people don't forget about him. And I think that's important if he's going to be successful. But really, he could go away for a year or two with, no appearances and then show up again, and people would be like very much excited and ecstatic to hear his new music or just to see him. That's the way Steve Perry fans are these days. They just like to hear him and see him, even if it's just for a brief moment. It gives them a glimmer of hope. All right, I'm done with this video. I will return with more soon. Stay tuned.